Rain fell in thin, steady lines over the gray stones of the village as Leora walked behind the black-draped procession. Her mother's coffin was carried with quiet dignity, though the villagers' eyes were full of whispers and judgment. Every step felt heavier than the last. The wind tugged at her cloak, and her hair clung damply to her cheeks. She tried to hold her head high, but her heart thumped with unease. Her mother, Ilara, had been a woman of quiet strength and mystery. She had kept the family's secrets close, and in a world that loved gossip more than truth, those secrets had grown into rumors. Some said the family was cursed. Others claimed misfortune followed Leora like a shadow. And today, as Leora walked behind the coffin, the whispers felt sharper, closer. When they reached the edge of the village cemetery, Leora's relatives waited. Their faces were stern, judgmental, and cold. Her uncle, tall and harsh, stepped forward. "You're worthless, Leora," he said loudly. The words cut through the rain, echoing in her ears. "Your mother's death was a mercy, for you will never be anything more than a burden." A shiver ran down Leora's spine. The villagers snickered quietly behind their umbrellas. Some turned away, pretending not to hear, while others stared with cruel curiosity. Leora's chest felt tight. She had known her life had been hard, but hearing it spoken so cruelly, at her mother's funeral, made her feel exposed, naked, and small. Her hands trembled, clutching the edge of her cloak. She wanted to run. She wanted to scream. But she stood still. She had always stood still. That was her way of surviving. Then, a voice, calm and deep, interrupted the cruel words. "Enough." The crowd fell silent. All eyes turned toward the voice. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. He was tall, with a presence that made the wind itself seem to bend around him. His dark hair fell just above sharp, thoughtful eyes, and his cloak shimmered as though it had been woven from the night itself. Leora felt her heart skip. Something about him was different. He did not fear the crowd, nor did he bow to their judgment. He was the Alpha, the one the villagers spoke of in hushed tones. Kalen, a man of power, feared by many, yet respected by all. Kalen's eyes found hers, and Leora felt as if he could see through the heavy cloak, through the rain, through her shame, straight into her soul. His gaze did not judge. It did not mock. Instead, it held something she had not felt in a long time. Acknowledgement. "You speak of worthlessness," Kalen said, his voice low but carrying across the graveyard. The villagers murmured, unsure how to respond. Some laughed nervously, trying to cover their embarrassment, but the sting of shame lingered. Leora felt a spark of courage ignite within her chest. Kalen continued, walking closer to her. "Strength does not always roar. Sometimes it waits in silence, in the way one endures when all else fails. She has endured. She stands. And that is more than any of you can claim." Leora's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken for her like this, not with such power, not with such certainty. Her uncle's face flushed with anger, but no words came from him. The Alpha's presence alone was enough to silence him. As the villagers began to disperse, whispering among themselves, Leora remained rooted to the spot. She wanted to run and hide, but something held her there. Kalen's gaze lingered, and she felt a strange pull toward him, a mixture of fear and fascination she could not explain. After the funeral, Kalen did not leave. He waited at the edge of the cemetery as the last mourners departed. The rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and still. Leora approached cautiously, unsure what to expect. "You do not belong to them," Kalen said simply, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. "They will try to break you, to make you doubt yourself, but I see something in you, something they cannot touch." Leora swallowed hard. Why would you care?" she asked. Her voice was small, fragile, but there was a flicker of defiance in it. Kalen smiled faintly, a shadow of warmth in his dark features. "Because I do not fear the strength you hide. I respect it." For the first time in her life, Leora felt as if someone understood her. Not her mother, not her friends, not even herself, fully, but him. The words wrapped around her heart like a gentle shield, giving her a sense of possibility she had not dared to imagine. "Come with me," Kalen said, turning toward the forest beyond the cemetery. "I can offer you a place where you are not judged by whispers and rumors. A place where your strength can grow." Leora hesitated. Fear twisted in her stomach. The forest beyond the village was dark, rumored to be filled with spirits and dangers that no villager dared to face. Yet, something in Kalen's presence made the darkness seem less frightening. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why would you choose me?" Kalen glanced at her, his eyes piercing yet gentle. "Because sometimes the world overlooks what is most precious. And because you have a spark they cannot extinguish." Her chest tightened with a mixture of fear, curiosity, and something else she could not name. Could she really trust him? Could she really step into a world she did not understand, leaving behind everything familiar, even if that familiarity had brought her nothing but shame? Before she could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed from the village. Her uncle had followed them, his face twisted with fury. "Do not listen to him," he shouted. "He will ruin you. He is danger itself." Kalen turned, his presence like a shield between her and the angered man. "Leora must choose her own path," he said, his voice calm but filled with power. Her uncle faltered, unsure how to respond to the Alpha's command. Leora felt a small surge of power within herself. Standing here, between the storm of judgment and the pull of something unknown, she realized that this was the first moment she had ever felt she might control her own fate. Kalen extended his hand. "Do you step forward, or do you remain in the shadows?" Leora looked at him. She looked at the forest, dark and mysterious, and then at the village behind her, small and suffocating. Her heart pounded in her chest, and for the first time, she felt the stirrings of courage. Not the loud courage of knights or warriors, but the quiet courage of someone ready to rise. She began, her voice shaking but steadying with resolve. "I will come." Kalen's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then follow me." As she stepped forward, leaving the village behind, Leora felt the weight of her shame begin to lift, replaced by a strange, thrilling uncertainty. The forest loomed ahead, dark and whispering secrets of its own. The path was unknown, dangerous, and full of challenges she could not yet imagine. Yet, for the first time, she felt alive. Somewhere deep within, she understood that the journey ahead would not only test her courage but also her heart. And in that journey, she would discover truths about herself and about the enigmatic Alpha who had chosen her that could change everything. As the shadows of the forest swallowed them, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying a chill that hinted at trials to come. Leora felt a shiver of both fear and excitement. She had been called worthless. She had been shamed and dismissed. But now, in the company of the Alpha, she realized something extraordinary. She was no longer alone, and perhaps, just perhaps, she was capable of becoming someone more than she had ever imagined. And somewhere, hidden deep in the darkened woods, the first stirrings of destiny began to awaken. The forest loomed ahead, ancient and whispering. Trees stretched high into the gray sky, their twisted branches like the fingers of forgotten spirits. Rain had left the ground soft and damp, and every step Leora took sank slightly into the soil. The air was thick with the scent of moss, wet leaves, and something faintly magical that made her skin tingle. Kalen walked ahead, his cloak brushing the forest floor, his eyes sharp and alert. Though he said nothing, Leora could feel his presence around her, like a silent shield, protecting her from whatever dangers might lurk in the shadows. The pull she felt toward him the day of the funeral had not lessened. If anything, it had grown, complicated by curiosity, fear, and a strange sense of trust she could not explain. "You must learn to trust yourself here," Kalen said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was calm, yet firm, carrying an authority that made the air seem heavier. "In this place, hesitation can be fatal." Leora swallowed hard. "I've never been anywhere like this," she admitted. "I don't know what I'm capable of." "For Missa." Kalen glanced back at her. "That is exactly why you must learn." He paused, studying her face. "Power is not just in strength or magic. It is in knowing who you are and claiming it, even when the world calls you worthless." She flinched at the word, still sensitive from the funeral, but she kept walking. Somehow, hearing it from him did not wound her, it sharpened her. She wanted to prove him right. As they walked, the forest seemed to shift around them. Shadows moved at the edge of her vision, and strange whispers floated on the wind. Leora tightened her grip on her cloak. "Is this forest dangerous?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Kalen smiled faintly. "It is alive," he said. "It will test you, if you let it. But it will also teach you. That is why I brought you here." Hours passed, and Leora's legs grew tired. They came to a clearing where a stream ran through, the water shining like silver in the dim light. Kalen stopped. "Rest here," he said. "We will not move further until you learn control over yourself, over your fear, your doubt." Leora sank onto a moss-covered stone, shivering despite her cloak. The quiet was almost too much after the storm of her emotions earlier. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but her voice felt caught somewhere deep inside. Kalen watched her, and the silence stretched between them, thick with tension. Then, almost without thinking, Leora asked, "Why do you care so much? Why not leave me to the world that shamed me?" Kalen crouched beside her, his gaze intense. "Because I see the truth they cannot see," he said softly. "They call you worthless. But I see strength. I see courage. I see a fire that has been hidden, waiting for someone to notice it." Leora felt her heart pound. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Not her mother. Not anyone. In the village. She wanted to ask more, but the words stuck in her throat. She looked down at her hands, feeling both vulnerable and strangely brave. "Your journey will not be easy," Kalen continued. "The world is full of those who fear strength, and there are forces here that will test you, forces that do not understand mercy or fairness. You must be ready." "I will try," Leora whispered. Kalen nodded, a small, approving gesture. "Try is not enough. You must choose to rise." The forest grew darker as the day waned. Shadows lengthened, and the whispering winds seemed to carry voices, faint and echoing. Suddenly, a low growl broke the silence, and Leora froze. From behind a thicket, two glowing eyes watched them. The alpha did not flinch. "Do not move," Kalen said quietly, his hand brushing the hilt of a sword at his side. The creature stepped forward, a wolf larger than any Leora had ever seen. Its fur was black as midnight, and its eyes burned with an unnatural glow. Leora's heart raced, but Kalen's calm presence steadied her. "This forest will reveal your fears," Kalen said. "Face it." Leora's hands trembled, but she took a deep breath. She stepped slightly forward, remembering his words about control and courage. The wolf growled, circling her, testing her. She did not scream. She did not run. She simply stood, her eyes meeting the creature's. To her surprise, it paused, then slowly turned and vanished into the shadows. Kalen watched, a hint of approval in his eyes. "Good," he said. "You felt fear, You acknowledged it, and you controlled it. That is the first step. Leora's chest heaved, her legs weak but her spirit stronger. I did it? She asked, disbelief in her voice. Kaelin smiled faintly. Yes, you did. And you will do more than that. But you must be willing to face more than fear. You must face yourself. Over the following days, Kaelin trained her in small but deliberate ways. He taught her to move quietly through the forest, to sense the rhythms of the wind and the subtle movements of the shadows. He asked her questions that forced her to think, to strategize, to challenge herself. Sometimes he would appear unexpectedly, a shadow among the trees, testing her reactions. Sometimes he would speak softly at her side, and she felt the pull of something deeper, something that made her heart race and her mind whirl. The tension between them grew, unspoken yet undeniable. She did not understand it fully, but it frightened and thrilled her all at once. One evening, they reached a secluded glade where the moonlight filtered through the trees, silver and soft. Kaelin stopped and turned to her. There is more to you than even you realize, he said. And there is a power in you that is waiting to awaken. But it is dangerous, and it will demand everything from you. Leora swallowed hard. I want to be strong. I want to prove that I'm not worthless. Kaelin studied her, his gaze intense. Then you must be willing to risk everything. Before she could respond, the wind shifted, carrying the sound of faint whispers, voices calling her name, echoing from the past. Leora felt a chill run down her spine. Something unseen watched them. She shivered, uncertain whether it was fear, excitement, or anticipation. Kaelin stepped closer, his presence steadying her. Whatever comes, you will not face it alone, he said. But you must choose to trust not only me, but yourself. That night, as Leora lay beneath the canopy of ancient trees, she could not sleep. Memories of the funeral and the cruel words of her uncle mixed with the day's lessons, the wolf and Kaelin's words. Her heart ached with longing she did not fully understand. And yet, somewhere deep within, a fire burned. She realized she wanted more than survival. She wanted to rise. She wanted to become someone who could face fear, judgment, and danger, and perhaps even embrace the strange, magnetic presence of the Alpha who had chosen her. But she also knew the forest was not forgiving. Shadows moved in ways she could not predict. There were creatures, forces, and secrets waiting, and her courage would be tested again sooner than she imagined. The next morning, Kaelin led her deeper into the forest. The trees grew denser, and the air seemed heavier. Leora's muscles ached from the previous days, but she pressed on, determined. Every step tested her resolve, every shadow seemed alive, every whisper a warning. Finally, they reached a stone circle in a hidden glade, ancient and worn by time. Symbols were etched into the stones, faintly glowing in the dim light. Kaelin stopped and turned to her. This is where you will learn the truth about your power and the curse that has haunted your family for generations. Leora's stomach twisted. She had been afraid of the curse all her life, and now she would face it head-on. Will it hurt? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kaelin's expression softened. Not if you face it with courage. Fear feeds curses. Strength weakens them. You must decide which path you choose. As she stepped into the circle, the symbols began to glow brighter, and the air thickened. Shadows swirled around her, and whispers filled her mind. Leora felt fear claw at her heart, but also determination. She would not run. She would not falter. Not now. Kaelin's hand brushed hers lightly, steadying her. Remember, he said, I chose you because you are capable of more than anyone knows. Trust yourself. The moment the words left his lips, a shadow detached itself from the darkness, looming before Leora. A test. A guardian of the curse. something she could not yet name. And in that instant, she understood. Her trials had only just begun. Leora inhaled, heart pounding, eyes wide. The forest held its breath. The Alpha had chosen her, but the forest, the curse, and the shadows would demand everything she had, and she would not turn back. The stone circle glowed faintly under the dim light of the forest, casting long, twisting shadows that danced on the moss-covered ground. Leora stepped carefully into the center, her heart pounding in her chest. The air was thick, almost alive, humming with a quiet energy that seemed to pull at her very soul. She could hear whispers again, soft but insistent, echoing her deepest fears and memories of shame. Kalen stood just beyond the circle, his eyes watching her intently. He had been her guide, protector, and teacher throughout this journey. Yet now, he allowed her to face the next trial alone. There was trust in his gaze, but also the unspoken warning that this test would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself. "You are ready," Kalen said quietly, his voice a tether in the swirling uncertainty. "The curse feeds on fear, doubt, and regret. Stand firm. Know your own worth. Only then can you break it." Leora took a deep breath, recalling the cruel words from her mother's funeral. "Worthless, worthless," she whispered, letting them fall away like leaves in the wind. She had felt that weight for too long. Now, she refused to carry it. As she lifted her chin, the symbols etched into the stone circle flared bright, and a shadow began to rise from the earth itself. It was enormous. A mass of darkness with glowing red eyes, a manifestation of the curse that had haunted her family for generations. The forest seemed to hold its breath, watching as Leora faced the creature alone. Fear surged, but she remembered Kalen's words. Courage is not absence of fear, but mastery over it. She planted her feet firmly and drew the memory of her mother's quiet strength into herself. "I am not worthless," she said aloud, her voice steady, echoing through the glade. The shadow hissed, the sound like grinding stone and rustling leaves, and lunged toward her. Leora braced herself, heart racing, but she did not falter. Instead, she focused on the energy thrumming inside her, the strange, magical power she had felt since arriving in the forest. It pulsed in response to her resolve, responding to the courage she summoned. With a deep exhale, she extended her hands, imagining the shadows dissolving under the light of her own determination. The glowing runes beneath her feet reacted, sending beams of soft silver light toward the darkness. The shadow recoiled, writhing, but it did not disappear. Kalen stepped closer, his presence like a solid wall beside her. "Do not doubt yourself now," he urged. "The curse will test everything you fear, everything you have ever believed. Hold fast to who you are." Leora's chest ached with fear and anticipation, but she drew on the memory of every small victory she had won. Facing the wolf, navigating the forest, learning from Kalen, she realized something crucial. Strength was not about fighting alone. It was about accepting help, learning, and trusting oneself in the face of impossible odds. Her hands glowed faintly with silver light, and she focused on the intent behind it. The shadow hissed again, louder, more threatening. It tried to claw at her with tendrils of darkness. But each time, Leora's confidence strengthened her power. She no longer trembled. She no longer doubted. Finally, the shadow froze, its red eyes flickering with uncertainty. It shrank, curling in on itself, then dissolved into a swirl of black mist that evaporated into the night. The air cleared, and a calm silence fell over the stone circle. Leora's knees weakened from exhaustion, but she stood tall, chest heaving with a mixture of relief and triumph. Kalen moved closer, his dark eyes filled with admiration and a hint of something softer, pride, maybe even awe. "You have done it," he said quietly. "You faced the darkness and did not waver. That is strength, Leora. That is worth." For the first time in her life, she felt the truth in his words. She was more than what the villagers had called her. She was more than her mother's legacy, or her family's curse. She was Leora, strong, capable, and worthy. Kalen extended his hand, and she took it, feeling the steady warmth of his presence. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath around them. Their eyes met, and the tension that had grown over weeks, fear, longing, admiration, unspoken questions finally softened into something tender and real. "You have grown beyond what I expected," Kalen said, voice low and intimate. "Not just in strength, but in spirit." Leora's lips parted, hesitant, unsure if she could voice what she felt. I could not have done it without you," she admitted softly. Kalen shook his head gently. "No. You did this yourself. I only guided you. The power, the courage, it has always been yours. You only needed to see it." She looked down for a moment, absorbing the weight of his words. Then, slowly, she met his gaze again, realizing something profound. She no longer feared him, nor the power he wielded. She felt a connection that transcended fear, a bond forged in trials, trust, and mutual respect. Then, what now? Kalen's expression darkened slightly, not with anger, but with the gravity of responsibility. "There are those in the kingdom who will never forgive weakness, who will never accept your rise. You must stand before them, not as a girl they deemed worthless, but as someone who has claimed her own power and her own destiny." Leora's heart raced. The thought of returning to the village, to the people who had mocked and shamed her, made her stomach twist. Yet, she also felt a spark of courage that she had never known before. I can do that," she said firmly. Kalen nodded, satisfaction in his eyes. "Good. But remember, this is only the beginning. Power, respect, and trust must be earned, even from those who fear it." The journey back through the forest was quieter, each step measured. Shadows still moved among the trees, but Leora no longer felt fear. She walked beside Kalen with confidence, feeling the strength in her own legs and the certainty in her own mind. She had faced her first true trial, and she had survived, stronger and more determined than ever. When they reached the edge of the forest, the village lay ahead, small and familiar, yet forever changed in her eyes. She could hear distant voices, the faint echo of gossip and judgment. But it no longer had power over her. She would face it. Yes, but on her terms. Kalen stopped and turned to her. "The choice is yours," he said. "You may walk back into the world as they knew you, or you may rise above it, as someone who cannot be broken." Leora looked at him, her chest swelling with newfound confidence. "I will rise," she said, her voice steady. "I will show them who I truly am." A small, approving smile crossed Kalen's face. "Then come with me," he said, "and together we will face whatever awaits." Hand in hand, they stepped into the village, and for the first time, Leora felt no shame. She met the eyes of her uncle and the villagers who had mocked her. Some looked surprised, some looked angry, but she did not waver. She held her head high, her shoulders squared, and walked with the calm authority of someone who had conquered fear itself. The villagers whispered, but Leora no longer heard them. Kalen stayed by her side, silent, protective, yet not overbearing. She felt a strange, comforting warmth, the knowledge that she had not only gained strength, but had found someone who believed in her, who saw her worth even when the world could not. As they reached the center of the village, a shadow stirred at the edge of the square. A rival, noble, resentful, and dangerous, stepped forward, eyes narrowed. But Kalen's presence was enough to halt him. Leora realized then that this was only the beginning. Challenges, danger, and opposition would come, but she was ready. She was no longer the girl called worthless. She was Leora, chosen, strong, and unafraid. Kaylin squeezed her hand gently, and she squeezed back. A silent promise passed between them. A promise of trust, of shared strength, of a bond forged in darkness and trial. The Alpha had chosen her, yes, but she had chosen herself. And together, they would face whatever shadows remained in the world. The wind whispered through the village, carrying the scent of rain, moss, and a strange magic that seemed to hum in harmony with her heartbeat. Leora took a deep breath and looked up at Kaylin. "I'm ready," she said softly. Kaylin nodded, his dark eyes gleaming with pride and something deeper. "Then we begin," he said, and as the first light of dawn touched the village, Leora felt the stirrings of destiny awaken fully within her. The journey had changed her, tested her, and shaped her, but the future was hers to claim. She was no longer worthless. She was powerful, courageous, and chosen, not by chance, but by strength, heart, and destiny itself.